of iterating, right? And seeing what works, and if something doesn't work, not being too attached to it, and then trying again. And I think what's really interesting and that I've definitely learned in the process is there's what you think people want and what they need, but you really have to talk to the consumer and say, okay, what do you actually want? What do you need? How can you, because something that would make total sense and something that I would like doesn't necessarily mean that someone that I would work with. In areas that we have expertise in, we work at a 9 or a 10, right, in that scale of 1 to 10, and most people can only take 1 or 2. So for me, realizing, okay, how do I break things down into more approachable steps for people? But there is this misconception that even when people are doing their estate documents, that it's one and done, right? If they do something once and then like, oh, it's fine. It's like, well, you had your will and your power of attorney and your advanced healthcare directives, you made them 20 years ago. And things have changed, right? Maybe you're no longer married to the person who's your executor and your beneficiaries, or you just don't like them anymore and you don't want to be, naming them in your will, right? The fact that these things can change and grow and evolve as we do. So a lot of what I do is that level of education and empowerment. And how do you give people those resources to be able to do some things, on their own? But like anything, there are people who need that extra accountability and that light coaching. It all depends on everyone's brain works differently. So the process is different. So having different things that can work for different people, right? So I have Back Up Your Life, and also under Back Up Your Life is Back Up Your Business, right? Especially for solopreneurs and small business owners who have all the information in their heads. It's a big part of their life, and they are more willing to invest in their businesses than they are in their personal selves, right? So being able to, how can I use that same framework of Back Up Your Life to back up your business? So for me, I actually joke and I say that I'm an accidental entrepreneur. This was not my initial situation. And even when I was doing more traditional organizing, I was not comfortable with the marketing aspect of it, being the face and having those conversations. It just wasn't what I was really comfortable with. And I think the biggest challenge as an entrepreneur is really getting out of your own way and just realizing that I was the one holding myself back the most. So the fact that I have made a lot of strides in my business in just the past 11 months when I made the decision to rebrand, right? And how that can just lead to other items and other people, and how do you put yourself out there, and to know that, if I'm talking with someone and if they're not interested to work with me, that's fine, right? Like, it's okay. And how can I find the people that I really want to work with and who I resonate with them and I can help them. So really it's just this level of not taking things personally, because really it's not about me, right? It might be people might listen to me more because of my story, and I have a personal, I've literally been there. I've been in the trenches. I understand that, but I can't talk about me. I'm not important. They're the people that are important. And also I try to make it a bit of a perspective shift, because a lot of people, they're like, oh wow, you want me to plan for my death? I'm like, well, not. I want you to be able to live your everyday life more easily and efficiently. And may we all live a long and happy life and die in our sleep, but that may not happen. And how can you make sure that people have the information that they need no matter what happens, right? Because maybe you're just traveling overseas and you are, stuck in an airport for a couple of days, and your home has a leak, right? Can you have the information for the plumber so that someone else can start that for you? But for right now, people don't really have the language around it, right? Like the same thing 20 years ago, if you asked about a professional organizer, people were like, what does that mean? Right? So, it's different than, oh, this person's a realtor, or this person is a business coach, or this. We have that reference point for all of those. It doesn't exist quite yet for what I'm doing. So a lot of it too is just having the patience and knowing that it takes, some things just take longer, right? The kind of idea of the sales cycle. It's more akin to the estate planning or financial planning. There are people who, I know in those industries, can have their first contact and don't start working with the service provider for another year. There are people who do this in other realms, right? Like there are people who talk about estate organizing or estate management. The thing that I do, which is different, is I look at things holistically, right? Because as I talked about, that pie of life, right? So you have pieces that an estate attorney will deal with, a financial planner, a CPA. But I deal with not only that piece, but also what about items in your home? Do you have children? Do you have pets? What about all of your online accounts, right? So there are people doing different pieces of that, but no one else that I know of is really taking and doing that holistic approach. So there's that piece, and I do use a software to help with what I do, like as far as that online, the kind of online vault data storage piece of it, because that's something that is not in my zone of genius, and I did not want to have to recreate the wheel when I knew that someone else was doing that. So the only kind of recurring expense is for the first year they get a year of that complimentary, and then beyond that they just pay me, because that way they'll always have access to me as well. So I'm doing this for Back Up Your Business, and I plan to do the same for Back Up Your Life in 2019, which is breaking things down into more of like a modular approach, right? Because I think so much of it's about mindset. And how do you do it? How do you try it? And also thinking about like what's the worst that can happen. And for better or for worse, after 2015, because you read about what happened with my mom, and my mother-in-law also passed in the beginning of that year as well. So that was a really hard year for our family. So after going through all of that, now it's back to perspective, right? So being like, well, what's the worst that can happen? This doesn't work out. Like, okay, I've always figured it out. You'll always, and I certainly hope and want this to succeed. And I think I bring a lot of value, and I think it's really it's really important work. But also to not be, again, not quite so attached to the idea, and a lot of it being a lot less precious. To just, how do we try something? How do we put it out there? Right, I'm putting out this digital product. I'm doing the best I can to start. I know it's going to change, and I know there are things that, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.